And the big front is the one that is playing havoc with the Cook Strait area going up to Australia. It doesn't help you any, but what's going to happen is that those two fronts are associated with a secondary low. I'm going to talk about this in a few minutes, but this is really for everyone that happens to be listening. So that front is associated with a depression that is part of this complex depression system that we've got. Now, on Sunday and into Monday, it disassociates from the main depression. So in other words, it just is like cut in half in the area of North Cape. So we're going to have then the remains of the front that will be more or less from just west of North Cape to Australia. And I didn't catch what your longitude was, but I'm sure you would be a little bit to the east of where the cut was. So there might still be some remaining convective activity is what all this is leading up to as you slide down to get into toward land. And that's going to play a little bit of havoc with the winds. They're going to be fairly light winds. As an example, on Monday, you're probably going to have southeast winds from all the way from Cape Reinga down toward Opua. Now, when you get close to land, depending upon how far out or how far in you are, they could actually wind up being southwest winds. But they're light, very, very light. So my guess is you'll be motor sailing or just plain motoring when you get in there. And I heard you were getting in Tuesday, and it's virtually
Monday PM.
Monday PM. Well, it's about the same difference. Looking at say around midnight on Monday. Yeah, not much difference. Southerly quadrant winds, fairly light. You'll be going through some convective activity before you get to the Opua or Marsden area. Then it should clear up. And yeah, it's a hard one to call. A lot of boats are coming in a little bit later than the actual front. The actual front is going to be coming in tonight. And it is at that slant. It goes from virtually North Cape to Cairns, if you were to look at it on satellite imagery. And then you'd see the secondary front, or actually the prefrontal band in front of that. Does that answer your question? Long roundabout here. Over.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. That's good. Yeah, so we'll be at least a full 3 days into Opua after that front passes you there. I'm thinking, at least when we set off from Newcal, I was looking at, information that was current Wednesday morning that looked like we would encounter that trough at about 31.53 south and about 173 east on Sunday afternoon, but I'm not sure if that's still the case.
You're coming from Newcastle?
Yes.
You said 30, and what was your longitude? Over.
I had 31.53 south and 173.14 east on Sunday afternoon at about 1700 over.
Yeah, it's going to be further to the west than that. And you now are...
He's at 2730 and
2730. You're not quite at 170, so you're quite a ways west. Now, being there, I'm going to give this back to Trish for a minute. Hold on.
Yeah, roger that. And I will just welcome to others that are on streaming. I put it on early today, seeing as I thought some people would be interested in some of the comments that David is making. And I welcome you all to the Friday show. This is Gulf Harbour Radio, ZMH286, Patricia and David. And we are on air 5 days a week. And I was just writing to Mike, actually, who runs the YIT site, asking him to put on Windy, whether he is using GFS or ECMWF, The reason for that is that they are slightly different at the moment as regards the arrival of the front in Opua. So it is quite important to know which one you're using. If you're using NetView, folks, you will be using GSF. And if you are using Windy on Yit, I think Mike was using, we asked him to use ECMWF so that you had something different to look at. So I'm just giving clarification on that one. All right, back to David.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what your grid that you were looking at was thinking. I think they were picking up the prefrontal band, and that would about correspond to what you were looking at. But where you are now, in the angle that you're sailing at, you're going to be on the northern fringe of the cold front itself. Maybe if you look out to the west, you could see cloud. I don't know. But you may very well be sliding right down the north side of it. Now, the good news for you is that, as is usually typical, these fronts track more or less southeast and east at the same time. They just sort of move in that direction. But this one doesn't look like it's going to do that because it becomes disassociated with the front, with the low. In other words, it's just cut right there, and it's just hanging in limbo. It may not slide east, so you may get down to Opua and not even see the front. It's quite possible that could happen for you. But there isn't a whole lot in this. I thought there was going to be more wind in this frontal band than what appears. I was able to get a satellite swath early this morning, and the winds weren't even in excess of 20 knots in this. So we're very lucky considering there are 50 knots down in the Wellington area. So I'll mention that as well in a few minutes. So anyway, the only thing you can do is just keep plugging along. There's really no strategy now. You're too committed. So just head for the barn, and hopefully things will turn out the way you think. If you're still out there on Monday, we'll be talking to you, and you'll be very, very close, if not in. So, yeah, that's about all I can say. Yeah, I'll talk more about it during the regular broadcast here. So here's the chief.
All right, and hopefully Fusio were listening as well, because they're a bit behind you, Peter. So with much the same conditions there. Lovely mild winds. They've got 13 knots of easterly. You've got 15 of northeast, sort of give or take, much the same. And lovely sunny day. All right, I'll clear with Seeker and just give a little bit of information as to what it's like here in New Zealand at the moment. We have got 18 degrees, folks. I know this will be stunning and amazing to you. 18 degrees because of the very, very light northerly wind, 3 knots. 1016 and steady on the bar. 90%, well, might be even 85% at the moment. Cloud cover, it's pretty thin looking. We're just sort of waiting on what comes tonight. Up there in Opua area, Billamy are reporting 10 to 15 knots of northwest. So that's interesting. 60% cloud cover with a falling bar, 1015. So that is interesting. Okay, we've got some lighter conditions in most places based on the reports that are coming in. Alcyon are pretty close as well. They're at 33 in 173.38 with a north-northeast 10, 20% cloud cover. They will be in by 6 o'clock tonight, so that's looking pretty good for them. Hopefully they'll just sneak in before the front comes. Good morning to Mezzaluna. They're up at 25.33 and 175 with 12 knots of east-southeast. 1 metre seas, 20% cloud cover. So that's not too bad, 1014. And Diamo had sporty conditions because they're further north, but they're gradually getting out of that now. 24 and 174 they are. 90% cloud cover, and the wind is slowly dropping, make life a bit more pleasant on board. Messatroy, further south at almost 27 and 174.5. So they're doing rather well. East-northeast, only 6 knots. So I guess the engine might be coming on fairly soon. Actually, it might be on now because they are doing 7 knots. But clouds scattered cumulus. 20 degrees still, so it's all pretty nice. 1014 and only half a metre southerly swell. So that's good. 4 seasons, east-northeast 13. Boy, these are lovely conditions. 1 metre easterly swell, 10% cloud cover. They are the ones trying to get down to Picton. So we'll see how that goes. That's always a difficult trip, folks, but we'll keep in touch on that one. And the Shore Crew, 4 seasons. The Shore Crew have given us your details for how to track you, so it's always good to have a Shore Crew, isn't it? Pilgrim, they're on their way, 20% cloud cover by the look of it. 16 knots of southeast up there at 19 up 54 and 17824 left Denarau. And so the southeast wind is a bit confused with the sea, but anyway, they're on their way. Mazu, good morning to you. Like to keep track of our single-handers. East-southeast 8, and he's at 2624 and 17435. East-southeast 8 with a 1 metre swell, the barometer 1015. We've mentioned Fusio when we were talking to Seeker, all going good there. And good morning to Scoots there in Denarau. I'll just have a look at the dashboard to see if there's anybody else coming up. No, all is well there, peaceful and quiet on the streaming. Let's move on to a little bit of news. We had very good conditions to the west before, but I want to just quickly go through a little bit of news to pass to David. Fridays is always a very, very busy day to hold you through the weekend. And I'll start with not very good news. There's been another mass shooting in California at a bar and grill for a college night at Thousand Oaks, an ex-Marine. Not much news as to why, but he just opened fire and there are 12 dead. So not very good news there. Actually, Mr. Trump is in a firing mood as well. He has fired Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General. It was on the cards, but not quite this quickly. Anyway, he's fired him. He was Mr. Trump is trying to end the Robert Mueller investigation into the Russian involvement in the election in 2016, and I don't think the Attorney General was helping. But anyway, he's gone. Some interesting news. The Girl Scouts in the USA are suing. They're going to court to sue the Boy Scouts, who have decided to call themselves just Scouts. So the Girl Scouts, in New Zealand, folks, we call the girls Girl Guides. But anyway, in America, they call them Girl Scouts, and they're upset that the guys are calling themselves just Scouts. So I suppose there's a bit of confusion there. I must admit, it sounds a petty thing, but when I worked for Coast Guard in Tauranga, we used to call ourselves Tauranga Coast Guard, and Auckland just called themselves Coast Guard. And it was always a little bit irritating that just because they were the biggest, they called themselves Coast Guard, as if they were the only ones in the world.
The big cheese.
The big cheese, yep. Anyway, the Girl Scouts are going to go to court. Somebody who probably is out of a job, a Norwegian frigate. They were just coming back from a NATO training exercise. They collided with an oil tanker and then went aground. So I suspect that the captain might be looking for another job. Maybe he'll go cruising. Lion Air, these are the ones that had the problem with the very new Boeing 777 that plunged into the ocean, killing everybody a week ago. They're not having a good time because a Boeing 777-900 has smashed into a lamppost when it was manoeuvring on the tarmac, right near where the wing curves up. So that one's out of action now. By the way, it looks like the problem was caused by a attitude probe, the one that sort of tells you whether you're nose up, nose down. Boeing have issued to everybody instructions on what to do if those things malfunction. You would really hope that the pilots would be able to deal with a malfunctioning probe, but anyway, I guess some of them don't. I think what we'll do is not fly Indonesian Airlines. Okay, I think that would be the solution to that one. I tell you what, you wouldn't want to go to Pakistan either. I haven't been telling you about this because I sort of tend to leave religious things off my list, but there was a woman jailed for a few years. She was a Christian in Pakistan, and she got water from a well, and then the Muslim woman wouldn't take water from the same well, and I think she might have said that that was a bit silly. Anyway, she was thrown in jail, and she was going to be put to death. Well, finally, after an awful lot of time and complaints from the world, they decided that she could be freed. Well, all of the Muslim men in Pakistan have taken to the streets to demand that she be beheaded, and that the judges that released her be beheaded too. So, boy, I tell you what, we play cricket with these people. It makes you wonder.
I've always asked that question, David, why you do that.
I don't know why we do either. But anyway, I don't think we play cricket with them in Pakistan anymore. I think we just play outside of Pakistan. But Imran Khan is now the president of Pakistan, and he was a very good cricketer. But
yes, he still has his head.
He still has his head. Yep. Okay. Dubai police, I had a look at this. They have they're experimenting with hover bikes so that they can get to places that are a little bit hard to get to. These are like a motorbike, but it sits on a sort of a frame with 4 little helicopter propellers, I guess, and they can hover above the ground. So that was kind of interesting to have a look at. They are getting training on them at the moment. Anyway, that's all I'm going to talk about today, apart from the fact that there's not a hell of a lot of interest of things in the world at the moment. It's a big day of interest here because of the weather. And I'm going to pass the microphone to David after I do a pause to see if there's anyone with anything particular before we get on to weather.
No weather questions. Okay, if you've got your questions regarding the weather, do it after this. Hopefully I'll answer some of it in the meantime. So good morning to everybody, and we're going to start just with the surface analysis today. We've been covering all the upper levels now for a few days, the jet stream and the 500 millibar levels and all that good stuff. So as we discussed yesterday, we've got a pretty large high that continues to sit just east of New Zealand. It's located roughly 37 south and 160 west, and the central pressure the east. So if you can picture in your mind's eye the center, the isobar around the center that says 1030, and then picture a ridge that extends way, way out toward Australia almost. Now, switching gears, the complex low that is south of New Zealand, that has spawned a low center over the top of the South Island. And I was just talking about that a few minutes ago with one of the yachts. And this is sending a cold front, and this is the cold front that those of you that are approaching New Zealand are going to have to deal with. So that cold front is situated, so it's an arc, if you will, that goes all the way up to Cairns in Australia. So it goes from New Zealand, bit of an arc, over to Cairns. So yachts arriving New Zealand today and tomorrow will probably encounter the front. Now, with great fortune, and I really mean that, this frontal band appears to be fairly weak. It's thrust between the big high to the east, and we have a new high that's entering the Tasman. And this particular frontal band, and there's a prefrontal trough in front of it as well, that's wedged between the two. And so you can picture, hopefully, that you have got airflow coming from a northerly direction from the high to the east and a southerly direction from the high to the west. So with these different density air masses, you are going to have action, and that's what we have in the form of a front. Now we'll jump to Sunday. That's whatever Sunday is. I think that's Sunday the 11th, not this coming Sunday, the one after that.
No, that's the 18th.
Oh, no, it's okay. What is the Sunday?
This Sunday is the 11th.
What's the date? Yeah, okay. The point is, New Zealand is going to be straddled by two high centers. Now, there is a developing subtropical low at the same time that's forming and should be found near 28 and 172 west. So it's 28 south and 172 west. And many of you have been concerned about this. We've talked about it now for a couple of days. Now, our original big high, the one to the east, that's still there. It's still in place. Hasn't moved very much. So now we are going to have three high centers. Three of them. We've got the one off to the east. They all are about 1030 millibar. So they're all very, very strong. Now, the isobars that are south of the subtropical depression are being pushed in a polar direction. It's like taking your thumb, if you will, and pushing the isobars to the south. So what that means is yachts that are sailing from Tonga, south from Tonga or Minerva, are going to more or less have headwinds. If it weren't for that subtropical low, this wouldn't be happening. But because that blasted low is in the way, it's torquing these isobars so that you're going to, I'm afraid, have headwinds. Now, winds up and down the date line look to be southeasterly winds, a pretty firm southeast. I was hoping there would be a little more east in the southeast, but doesn't appear to be. So you're going to be pretty close reach, I guess, if you're coming down the date line. Now, yachts coming in from New Caledonia are lucky because there you're going to have your easterlies as a very mild polar dip is forecast for this new Tasman high. This is the third high. And within the dip, within these polar dips, we usually see convective activity. So while the wind direction is going to be looking good, cloud showers and squally conditions should be expected. So weather now for yachts about to arrive in New Zealand, those of you that will be here sometime this weekend. Well, we've had gale and storm force winds down in the Wellington area. The Opua Marsden area are going to be very lucky, as I said earlier. The winds are just a fraction of those encountered to the south. I would say winds that are 50 to 100 miles out from North Cape are going to be northerlies about 20 knots, maybe getting up to 25 knots. And that's about it. It really doesn't look like more than that. I got a pretty good microwave run this morning, and we're looking at 20, 22 knots in that. So that's pretty close to what the models are thinking. Now, this is going to continue until the front actually arrives, and that arrival is going to be between dinner today and about 10 p.m. It's not a very broad front area-wise. It's long, but it's not broad. So Saturday, roughly 10 a.m. Saturday, the front is going to start to clear the North Island with winds shifting to southerly quadrant. Then they're going to think about going southeast, and that'll be in the 15 to 20 knot range as well. Now, for those that are behind the front, the winds between 30 and New Zealand are going to be light southeasterlies. Actually the same between 25 south and 30 south, pretty much the same. And that subtropical depression is going to be centered near 27 and 170 west. Now, by Monday, those of you that are still on passage from Tonga or Fiji should see southeasterly winds, give or take on that. However, if you're coming in from New Caledonia, you'll see easterlies, give or take. It just depends on what latitude that you're at. Now, the old frontal band, the one that is going to clear the North Island sometime on Saturday, at the same time that it's doing that, it's going to disassociate itself from the main band, and the low that is to the south. So there'll be a break there. And all of the bad weather that's in the south, including one half of that cold front, they'll move off. But the one to the north is actually going to sit around. And this is what I was talking to the other yacht about that's coming in from New Caledonia. Very well could wind up riding along the northern side of this front that doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Now, if your winds switch to the south or southeast, you'll know that the axis of that front is to your north. That'll be your clue that you've actually gone through it. It might be clear air where you are, but if you were to look at satellite imagery, you'd see the structure of this thing. So that's sort of the story. Now, looking ahead, by Thursday of this coming week, the passage route winds are going to be more or less southerlies if you're west of 170 east. So virtually hang on to your false teeth, I guess. It's going to be a bit bumpy. So that wind direction is all going to be a function of what your longitude is. So come Monday, as you're heading toward New Zealand, we'll update you on exactly what is happening. So, but that's the story of arriving here in New Zealand. So if anybody has further questions about the arrival, let us know. Actually, you're probably not going to be hearing us too well on the radio. Now, we were talking about polar dips. Now, there is a polar dip that looks evident at and east of the date line, and that's going to be coming up this early next week as well. And that's going to have a fair amount of convective activity in that as well. And we'll update you on Monday. There's no point in talking about it now because that's probably going to change. But it's all to do with that third high, and within that high, the polar dip on the north side. So in other words, the isobars, instead of making a nice anti-clockwise circulation, drawing a nice circle, if you will, it's going to be flattened out, or it's going to be pushed toward the south. So there'll be a dip, what we call a polar dip. And whenever that happens, there's always convective activity. And the reason for that is as the wind takes the turn to head west, and then it drops to the south because it's got a polar dip, it's going to speed up. And then as it gets to the bottom of this little roller coaster affair and it starts to go back toward the equator, it slows down. And when the air mass slows down, then it's going to pile up, air is going to pile up, rise, and that's when we'll get our cloud and convective activity. So that's the dynamic of polar dips. Now, looking at the tropics, from the islands to the equator, it's filled with troughs and convective cells. The worst of it is over Tokelau, Wallis, Samoa, and finally over to the Cooks. And also bad news for the Solomons down to the Santa Cruz Islands. So if you were to look at satellite imagery right now, you would see what I'm talking about. So just a lot of cloud, a lot of convective activity, rain, squalls, that sort of thing. So over to Tonga, the active systems that we've had continue to inundate New Potatoes, Nuutu Tapu. It's been like that now, for 3-4 days. And the edge of this trough is tickling the bow. like it has been. Imagery also shows cloud over the Hapais and Tongatapu, but those clouds are mostly low cloud broken scattered, so not much to write home about there, fortunately. So for the main group, we're going to see a mix of fine weather and scattered cloud and some showers today and especially tomorrow. The winds today mostly southeast, might be getting up to 20 knots for a time. Now, I still see an area of cyclonic disturbance that's to the west of Nui Tupatapu on Saturday. These are cyclonic winds. They look like they'll get up to about 25 knots. And there's a trough from that that's going to affect the main group. We're going to have northerly quadrant winds that are going to be clashing with south-southeast winds, with the opposing wind flows continuing on Sunday. Monday, we're going to be back to south-southeast. And then I'm afraid we're going to see more bad weather, possibly Wednesday of next week for the group. So not looking particularly fantastic for Tonga. Over to Fiji, for those of you that are still there. Satellite imagery is showing scattered to broken cloud and also areas of fine weather. Now, most of the showers are going to occur mostly in the afternoon, typical tropics type of weather, and more or less the same thing is going to happen on Saturday, except for poor Rotuma, and they're going to continue to get hammered by that persistent and quite active trough, which also brings with it a strong wind warning from Fiji Met. But for the main group, we still have a strong wind warning from Fiji Met. That's still in force with southeast winds 20 to 25 knots, and that'll continue through Saturday. Winds, I think, are a little bit lighter on Sunday, maybe 15 to 20, but there will be areas of 25 knots, for instance, at Tuira Pass, that sort of thing. Call for details if you need them. Monday doesn't look good either, folks. There is a possible tropical disturbance that may bring cyclonic winds with fairly extensive convective activity. Now, this is the same disturbance that's to the west of New Potatoes. Models are disagreeing on where it's going to wind up, so take your pick. It's going to be anywhere between New Potatoes and Fiji or closer to Fiji, somewhere in that area. In any case, it's going to bring poor weather to both island groups. Over to Vanuatu now, where an active convective band affects mostly the north. I would say the Torres and the Banks. You can see that very clearly on satellite imagery. The rest of the group looks pretty good. Plenty of blue sky. So the winds today, east-southeast to southeast, about 15 to 20. Tomorrow, easterlies to east-southeast as well, 15 to 20. And Sunday, virtually the same. Now, we may see some convective activity on Monday due to the possible proximity of this disturbance. Remember, we don't know exactly where it's going to be or how broad it's going to be. So keep that in mind if you are in Vanuatu. Now, Newcastle looks great on satellite imagery. There's some scattered cloud about, but mostly fine weather. In our lagoon and Ile de Pan, expect 10 to 15 knots just north of east. They'll be tending easterly later today. Saturday and Sunday, about the same for the lagoon. Winds east to just north of east, I would say 15 to 20. Nemea is a little bit different today and tomorrow. We could be seeing southeast winds getting up to 20 knots, thereabouts. And that southeast could vary considerably. In a second, you'll see why. Because the actuals, Amity Light, east 18, Ile de Pan, east 10, Nemea was east-northeast 13. So land effect takes a big role in what the wind does around the Nemea area. So that's the reason things sound a little bit out of whack when we're talking about the Nemea winds themselves. Over in the loyalties, fairly light air this morning, early this morning, southeast about 5 as an average. The various islands have slightly different directions, but that's roughly what we've got. So that sums up what I've got for the weekend, and we'll be back on Monday to update those that are still underway, of which there are boats scattered, it seems, virtually everywhere. So if you have any questions over this weekend of import, you can email us, and I'll do my best to let you know what the latest is. And with that, I'll give it to the chief, and you can come now with questions if you've got them.
Mr. Luna, go ahead, and I'll just tell David where you are, Jeff. 2533 and 175 East at the moment. Go ahead.
Yes, Dave mentioned that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week, winds will be out of the south, but no mention as to what kind of strength they would have. So wondering about that. See whether we're going to be arriving on Wednesday.
Alrighty, the strength of the winds next week when they turn to the south. Stand by, folks.
Well, Monday and Tuesday is about as far as I really want to go. Not very strong. Monday light, I would say about 10 to 15. And on Tuesday, right through Tuesday, oh boy, if you draw a line due north of North Cape, to the west of that line, they're looking at about 20 knots. But if you're east of that line, I would say about 10 to 15 knots. Over.
Alrighty, thank you. And that's an interesting question for those that are a little bit later. Just to tell David that Serena Orr is on their way to Brisbane, so to remember to do that particular direction as well next week. So Soteria are having a good time. They're on their way. 2746 and 17451. Lovely conditions, 15 knots of wind at the moment. So they're doing 8 to 9 knots. So it's about the only ones that have come in since we started talking. Oh, Anna Harter, did I mention that? Yes, I think I did before. Anybody else with a question? There was somebody there and I missed the name. Go ahead. Did you get that? Yeah, it's cutting in and out a bit, but go ahead with your question and we'll see what it is.
We have a call. We might need the
Oh, hello, Eric. Yes, it's you've got that funny cutting in and out on your radio. I should have recognised that one. Well, Serena of Orr, David, wants some southerly winds. They're on their way from Noumea to Brisbane. They've been motoring and they want some the southeast winds that were forecast. So if you could tell us when they're going to get those. The wind at the moment is only a very, very light, next to nothing northerly, 2 to 4 knots. They're currently at 2, 4 and 160, give or take. So when are they going to get some wind from the south?
Where are they?
They have left Noumea and they're on the way to Brisbane at 2434 east. Sorry, 2434 south and one. Boy, this is they've got it round the wrong way. But anyway, 2434 south and 16036 east.
I don't see northerly winds at all.
Well, that's what they've got. He's looking at the models and saying, I don't see any northerly, but it's next to nothing. And they do want the southerly. I'm going to pass it to you for that passage from Noumea to Brisbane. Yeah, tell them you've got that. I'll correct it.
Righto. Okay, you're in it's a strange spot, and I can see it on the satellite imagery. I can see where you've got light air. It's an area right about where you are that the winds are every which way, and I can see the northerlies, actually, where they're coming from. you're right on the edge of the anticyclone, and you're on the edge of the anticyclone that's a little bit to the east. Now, there's a second anticyclone that's building, and the minute you get a little bit further west, you're going to certainly get much more wind. As an example, we're looking at about 20 to 25 knots out of the southeast. This is today, but it's just a little bit further to the west of where you are. And then on Saturday, a little bit lighter. It was just that period today where we've got quite a bit of wind. But the high settles in, and south of 25 and moving west as you go, the winds will be southeast, probably about 15 knots, maybe even 15 to 20 on Saturday, and then Sunday, about the same. I would say about 15 knots out of the southeast. And what was your destination again?
Brisbane.
Never mind, Brisbane. Yeah. What's your ETA for Brisbane? Over.
Tell them I've corrected. I'll do that.
I can't get it. What?
Yeah, I have corrected that on the YIT site, Eric, for you. And just to let others know, although we are not associated with YIT anymore, I am still able to go on and correct anything that comes through a bit squiffy for you. So just let me know if you make an error there. But no, that was pretty obvious. So we've changed that for you. And you're looking at 3 days from now to get to Brisbane.
Okay. Looking at Sunday, Monday, what?
Monday.
Southeast 15 to 20.
Okay, looking at Monday, southeast, or what did you say, southeast?
Yeah. You're looking at southeast 15 to 20 just offshore. I can't give you the winds as you're approaching Brisbane itself. I don't trust the models in close to land, but just offshore, we'll be looking at about 15 to 20 knots southeast on Monday. Over.
Okay, I think you've got that. Well, your radio is a bit of a trial for us. Okay, is there anybody else? We're clear with Sirena of Ore. Anybody else? Okay, sounds like everybody's trucking and will enjoy the weekend. Bit of rain coming for most people. Absolutely torrential rain down south. Started yesterday. Flooding, quite considerable flooding on the west coast. They're pretty used to it, of course, but it's been pretty bad down there. They've had to prepare for evacuation of old people's homes and stuff like that. So, and it's certainly pretty snotty conditions in Wellington with the gales coming through.
Not looking too good here.
Not looking too good here, says David, but it's nice and warm, and even warm in Opua, so everyone will do as much as they can before the weather arrives. Have a very good weekend, everybody. We will be available on email, of course. The email is ghradio@extra.co.nz. Just make sure if you contact us that we know your ETA and where you are, of course. So let us know that if you have a specific question to get you through the weekend. Some of you are going to be outside of our radio broadcast on Monday anyway. So the others of you will be able to contact the HamNet if you're ham licensed on 14315 at 2100 UTC. That's always a good one. We have given a call to the boat who's, Shisan. Shisan, if you're listening, we have been calling you, but haven't heard anything back. But it's often quite noisy in Denarau. It's the boat that's trying to get north to the Marshalls. All right, that's it from us. Good morning, everybody. Have a good weekend. The frequency's all yours. Cheers.